This particular wall outside the University of Art Museum in Berkeley, that's the picture to the right. So what he writes is the following, and it gives you kind of an idea of how he thinks. And he talks about stress, how there's this thing called a stress reservoir, and how living in these types of cities and surroundings causes us stress as well. To see more exactly how the accumulation of stress and disruption of the healthy relation between living structure in the environment and human freedom works, look at the case of a wall outside the University Art Museum in Berkeley, California. This wall has sloping sides, unlike a normal wall which has straight sides. Both ground surface and wall are made of concrete, and the concrete slopes and curves continuously from the flat ground to the vertical surface of the wall to form a wall. I suppose the architect thought this would be fun or exciting, or perhaps just, quote, different. But what it actually does is to create a very tiny amount of stress. A person walking along cannot quite tell where the sloping part starts, so there is a chance of tripping. One has to walk away from the wall, minding one's feet, and has to give up what one is thinking in order to concentrate on not bumping into the wall. And if you were inclined to sit on the wall, you could not. The top of it is too far back from the flat part of the ground. Your legs don't quite reach. So this wall, apparently fun and interesting, is actually a little expensive in needless stress and in discomfort. This could have been avoided by an ordinary wall 16 inches high, thick enough to sit on, with a wide top, where you can see what it is when you walk by, and where you can sit down if you are tired, wait for a friend, or have a sandwich. That's just a tiny example. But you can kind of see what he meant when he described it, right? You can see people sit there and maybe chat and maybe eat something.
Yeah.
So and I mean, it's not like people haven't tried this before. Like there was a whole bunch of stuff in the Bauhaus architecture movement where they tried to make stuff perfectly apply to people. But for some reason, and you know, Alexander laments this, we can't seem to stop ourselves from just building more stuff that makes everything worse. Like I had a conversation with Burn Power a while ago where we talked about this stuff a lot. I don't know if you ever saw that, but we talked about Alexander and mass production. And I talked to you before about these Netflix boxes. You know, when I was in this for this conference in Canada, and we had this rented apartment, and you went into this apartment block, which was so many stories high. And then you went in these elevators, where huge elevators. It took a long time to come down, and you could just stand there waiting for the elevator for a long time. They stand the elevator, ignoring each other. And I mean, I like to yak with people, but you don't do that there. And they go into your apartment, and there's nothing there, not even a kitchen to cook. There's no space to sit. There's a TV and a bed, and that's it. It's not a space to live. It's from where you go elsewhere to live, but then you're in the center of Toronto, and man, that was just depressing. It was depressing to be there. Yeah, Netflix boxes is what they called those things. So in book 2, the process of creating life, he goes to okay, so how would you make these structures? There's a beautiful photo of a community center in Indonesia where you have all these little, you know, you can see how it slopes naturally, and there's all this color. So one of his primary ideas is that the space that is lived in should be built by the people, or at least the people should be heavily involved in the system that it is created for. Now, for me, somebody who works in software, that rings a bell, because that's part of agile software development, where you know, like Bob Martin wrote this book called Clean Code about agile software development, where the idea is, well, you sit with the people that you built the product for, because they have the domain knowledge. They're the potential users. So it's not just, oh, you know, let's be kumbaya together. It's no, how can we reduce wasted time, wasted money, frustration? How do you basically create a road where all your users only ever hit green lights when they're trying to get somewhere? That's good usability. I mean, and as somebody who worked in the field of accessibility for a long time, that's just there are so few projects that you actually get to do that are about that. So book 3 is by far the thickest book, A Vision for a Living World. And that's just kind of like, where could this take us if we did this right? And the reason I have a post-it in there is because this beautiful picture of work that he did on a cafe in Austria called the Linz Cafe. And that's just this beautiful picture of this cozy little cafe room. And you can kind of just imagine sitting there. You know, it's kind of like a train, seats in a train that are cozy and it is easy to look at all this stuff and think, oh, that's romantic and silly. But I think he was dead right in a lot of this stuff because it connects to so many things, so many other things that I've seen in this little corner discussed as well. I mean, he talked about meaning and living in spaces and how that screws with the way you feel and the way you find meaning. I mean, like you had Redeemed Zoom around the other day, right? And he says,
Yeah.
I don't want to, worship in a strip mall. I want to connect with the beautiful and the good in something that's beautiful and good.
Yeah.
Like I totally get that.
Yeah.
And I mean, even let's say you had a strip mall Orthodox church, you're still going to fill it up with candles and bones and carpets.
Unless the fire marshal comes through.